I hope you enjoy this talk about an extraordinary woman, Mary A. Reynolds, 1860 to 1948.
Mary Adeline Reynolds was a woman before her time. Born in 1860 on a farm in Greenwich, she spent 25 years living a privileged married life in New York City. Deserted by her husband when she was 50 years old and with no business experience of any kind, she remade herself by dint of innate intelligence, classic good taste, and hard labor into a successful real estate developer long before women were accepted in that field. Her story has not been told in Greenwich history, and with her 23 remaining houses, either 100 years old or approaching it, hopefully this indomitable woman will get the recognition she deserves. This was the impetus for my book. And I'd like to add here that my main resource for the book is her memoir, 80 Years, in which she detailed many things. And that book is also available if you want it. You can get it as you leave in the shop. Also, Loyal to the Land, which is a Greenwich history, and Examining Our Roots, which is about founding of the Stanwich community and the church. So, 220 years after the founding of Greenwich in 1640, Mary Adeline Reynolds was born on March 6, 1860, to Sarah Sackett Wilson Reynolds and Elkanah Meade Reynolds. Her ancestors on both sides were original founders of Greenwich, Elizabeth Winthrop through the Sackett line and Jeffrey Ferris through the Reynolds side. Her original American ancestors, John and Sarah Reynolds, were in Watertown, Massachusetts by 1634, where he was sworn in as a freeman in 1635. They followed their pastor to Wethersfield, Connecticut, and then to Stamford by 1640. Their sons, Jonathan and John, were living in the Greenwich settlement, which we now call Old Greenwich, by 1650. The brothers were sworn in as freemen in 1669, and both their names appear on the list of the 27 proprietors of 1672. A word about being a freeman, with a capital F. This was a designation given by the New Haven colony, which allowed the person to vote in town matters and carry out the business of the community. He was had to be a person in good standing in the church to have that designation. Both brothers were involved in the laying out of the new lands in Horseneck, which is Greenwich proper, in 1686, and the Reynolds brothers relocated there. Fast forward to 1733, Mary's ancestor, Nathaniel Reynolds, born in 1715 to 1792, 18 years of age, struck out from Horseneck to the new settlement at Stanwich, where he took possession of acreage his father already owned. The new community at Stanwich had been founded in 1731 by a group of backcountry Greenwich and Stamford farmers who wished to worship closer to home. It's a long trip down to Greenwich itself. It was intended to be a separate community with a church, school, and post office. Nathaniel married Sarah Lockwood, whose family had already settled in the community, and he started a long line of Stanwich farmers, which would end only when Sarah, Elkanah's wife and Mary's mother, sold their farm at auction after his death in 1892, 160 years later. This farm was located on the east side of Stanwich Road, just above the present Merritt Parkway. Reynolds family farmlands on the east side of Stanwich originally stretched from Guinea Road to Todd Lane. a distance of a mile. And this is the picture of the front of the Stanwich farmhouse, followed by the side, and then the layout of the property, which was drawn. So those were the farm buildings. Mary was born into both the 8th and 9th generations of the John Reynolds family in Greenwich through the lines of both brothers. Mary was the 8th of 9 children in a loving and hardworking family. She was brought up strictly but happily. She participated in all the activities of the house and the farm, always assisting her mother, who had all the typical duties of a farmer's wife. The church and the Bible were of primary importance, as was a good basic education, strong Christian character, and the social graces. On Sundays, this is a little artistic rendering of the Taconic Road going up to North Stanwich Road with the church there on the left. On Sundays, they attended Stanwich Congregational Church, which was then on the corner of Taconic Road and North Stanwich Road. This large and handsome church was burned to the ground in 1927 after being struck by lightning. And this then is North Stanwich Road. And you can see 3 houses, one in back, one across, which is the Stanwich Inn, and one here. And those houses are all there, all part of the historic district that Russ was very involved with starting. So we have a historic district up there. Sundays were quiet and devoted to God. Mary Reynolds later reported that she had read the Bible from cover to cover 5 times in her youth, a remarkable achievement. And education was almost as important as piety. Mary attended small nearby schools, but later she attended Greenwich Academy for two years. She completed her education at Mrs. Edmund West School, located at Park Avenue on the Post Road, from which she graduated at 18 years of age. Both of these schools were downtown, which necessitated her boarding during the week, from Monday to Friday. After, this is your young Mary, probably in her 20s, up to 25, she could be any. After Mary was 18, she spent a good deal of time with her cousins, the Sturgises, in New York City. The city's social life was vastly different from that of the country. It was more like a cultural finishing school and prepared her well for her future married life in the city. Marriage in those simple farming days usually occurred between sons and daughters of family, friends, and it's a little ahead. Sons and daughters of family, friends, and neighbors who met at church were often relatives who had moved on to other places. There was a time to get married, and it was the expected next step for a young woman. Since nothing had happened romantically in the 7 years since her schooling ended, Mary's parents found a handsome and bright young man, John J. Reynolds, from a related family in Mount Kisco, New York. He also had been raised on a farm and had attended private school in Chappaqua. He was Mary's second cousin once removed. This was an arranged marriage in every way. She and John J. Reynolds were both 25 years old when they married in 1885. They moved to New York City, where John was in the cheese business with his older brother, Alba, and they boarded in various homes just as we would have a starter apartment while they had their 3 children, Edna, Lester, and Russell. In 1894, 9 years after their marriage, they bought their own home, a brownstone, at 142 West 12th Street. This is a picture of the children in front of the home. It was 4 stories tall, including the basement, 53 feet deep and about 28 feet wide. This house had large rooms, high ceilings, arcade floors, 5 fireplaces, and a nice rear yard. Her daughter Edna adds that there was running water in the bathrooms and bells and speaking tubes in the main rooms to communicate with the kitchen. They employed 6 people in help. Their children attended the best schools, Miss Spence's for Edna and Columbia Grammar School for the boys. This was certainly the high point of their life together. Life continued in this way until Edna had graduated from Spence School and the boys had matriculated at Princeton for Lester and Columbia for Russell. Then came a sudden change in Mary's life. Perhaps Mary had gained an inkling that John had distanced himself from her and that the marriage was in trouble. She, or they, decided that a move to Greenwich in 1909 might improve the marital situation. They had lived at West 12th Street for 15 years. They bought a large home in Greenwich on the corner of Brookridge and the Post Road and named it Windacre. They had a lovely wedding reception there for their daughter Edna, who married Herbert Ferris, with 200 guests. And yes, Windacre is still standing, and it's the subject of a current zoning fight. Apparently, the move to Greenwich didn't improve the marital situation, and John was away much of the time. Only 2 years later, in 1911, Mary woke up one morning to find that her husband had left. They had been married for 25 years. This was a cataclysmic upheaval in Mary's life. Divorce wasn't legal in Connecticut and was regarded as shocking everywhere else. This took place long before wives were financially protected in any way. So it resulted in her leaving the Brookridge house behind. She took only her own possessions from Windacre. A lawyer helped her to sue her estranged husband, attaching the property, and John was forced by law to give her $150 a month, which was not enough for her to live on. Imagine Mary, 51 years old, suddenly left with no means, no protection, and no business skills. The fact that she pulled herself together and started on a career path of her own reflects her strong Yankee character, her energy and drive, her confidence in herself, and most of all, her innate trust in God. She rented a house on Mar Avenue, an in-town street just being developed, and took in boarders. And this is not the one, this is her first house, not the one she rented. Took in boarders. With the financial help of her children and son-in-law, Herbert Ferris, she bought a parcel of land at 2 Mar Avenue for $2,600. And this is the only house that has been torn down. It was a very nice house. It was copied. She had favorite houses she copied, and the next slide will show you what she was copying. This was her grandparent, Wilson's home on King Street in Portchester. And I want you to notice the Dutch gambrel roof, because that is something that she repeated a lot. And it created room to have people, boarders, bedrooms, maids, whatever, in the 3rd floor. It was one of her kind of trademark things. She got a loan of $600 from the bank and built that house to her own design, copying this idea of her grandparents' house. She moved into it and took in boarders again. Speaking of boarders, remarkably, with all Mary Reynolds was doing, she still ran a boarding house while she built her first 7 houses. This house was sold at a profit of $4,600, and this was certainly a successful first endeavor. Out of all of her 24 houses that we have identified in Greenwich, this is the only one that was torn down and replaced in 2002 over the protests of her neighbors. And I heard that from Phoebe Sheridan. They all tried to not have it torn down. I recently found out that the new owner had 10 children. So perhaps that explains the need for more bedrooms. And as to the number of houses that she built, in a personal note found in her own handwriting, in her own personal desk, it says that she built 28 houses in Greenwich. In her obituaries, 3 of them, 2 in New York and 1 in Greenwich, they also were unsure about the numbers, reporting totals from 20 to 30. And, frankly, I cannot find more than 24 houses. So that's, 13 of these houses, the first 10 and the last 3 were built to her design and drawn up by her contractor. Her classic good taste, her experience as a prosperous housewife, and her desire to use only the best materials and workmanship resulted in houses that are still desirable today after 100 years. Mary had an innate sense of architectural style. She also copied the design and facades of houses she admired, one being the lovely farmhouse mentioned here, the Wilsons, and another being the Home Sweet Home house, a copy from a picture that she grew up with and loved. Her taste tended towards center hall colonials, often with a Dutch gambrel roof, which created more usable space in the attic. All of her houses were classic in design and styled with white clapboard, shingle, English Tudor, or stucco exteriors. She became a highly regarded woman for her financial acumen and trustworthiness and for the quality of her homes. All her homes sold quickly. Mary had good taste and a practical bent. Almost every house had her signature trademarks. These included beautiful and usable large pantries, spacious closets, provision for a hand-operated elevator if needed, back stairs connecting the first and second floors and the third in some cases, maids' rooms, usable attics, interior glass doors closing off the dining room and sometimes the living room, corner cabinets in the dining room, and a well-constructed outside porch which could be easily closed in to make another room for the house. She had that on every house. Sometimes she installed Dutch doors made in 2 parts for an outside door. All this was done with the highest quality materials and workmanship. She built her houses to last and forever, and so far they have. Her second home is 25 Mar Avenue. Mary wisely put her building projects on hold for World War I. But in 1920, she purchased 2 lots on the even numbered side of Mar Avenue. She attempted to build on both lots at the same time, and according to her, quote, almost went under, unquote. John Jay's youngest brother, DeWitt Clinton Reynolds, perhaps feeling guilty about his brother's behavior, lent her $7,000 to complete the job successfully. This taught her a valuable business early in her career, and she was never financially reckless again. And these 2 houses are 30 Mar Avenue and 34 Mar Avenue. Both owners are here today. Her fifth house, 71 Mar Avenue, was drawn to her specifications by Theodore Blake, 1870 to 1949, a noted New York architect who had done work in Greenwich. According to Mary, he, quote, he drew, quote, beautiful details. It was a fine house, and I would have liked to have remained there. And remember, her first 7 houses, she's still taking in orders. Mary Reynolds would have been very familiar with this neighborhood as the home of her great-grandparents, Justice and Anna Sackett. Let's have the next one. This is a watercolor. The house is a very, very handsome house, and you all know it is on the corner of Mar and Patterson Avenue. It was built by her great-grandparents, Justice and Anna Sackett, in 1779. It sits majestically at the corner of Moore Avenue and Patterson Avenue. This house was moved from the corner of North Street and North Maple Avenue in 1905. Interestingly, as it was rolled down Patterson Avenue to its new location, the front of the house became the rear. Since the center hall ran all the way through, front to back, it could work just as well, either way. A porch share was added to the new front at 45 Patterson Avenue. And this beautiful antique house is currently owned and preserved by the Brunswick School in the home of Leland and Tom Phillips. Beautiful house. Mary felt the burden of her work and had time for little else. She confides in 80 years that after her divorce, which she had to get in New York State on the grounds of adultery, quote, she no longer felt that she could be in society, unquote. Her world revolved around work, family, and church. Quote, I do not know how I was able to keep going from 6 a.m. to midnight, managing and supervising house after house, 7 in Moore Avenue, and I was no longer young. God must have given me strength. The next house she built is 22 Lenox Avenue, where Sue Davies lived as a child. And after that, 97 Moore Avenue, which is also owned by Brunswick School. Mary then bought 2 lots in the prestigious Belhaven area. These would be her most expensive houses to date. There's a picture of 70 Bush Avenue and 68 Bush Avenue, which is owned by the Smiths. Leonard Scott Smith's house at 68 Bush Avenue in Belhaven, styled after the Home Sweet Home house, is the best preserved of Mary Reynolds' houses that I have visited. The Smiths have lived in the house since 1980. I'm getting that in reverse. And aside from a beautiful new kitchen and enlarging and enclosing an outside porch in the rear, one is able to see Mary's workmanship in the original construction. The style is center hall Dutch colonial. The front hall goes through to the rear with Dutch doors front and back. There is a classic stairway with windows at the top of the landing. The living room lies to the left of the hall as you enter. And immediately on the right is the most beautiful pantry. Let's see, where did we lose the pantry? Oh, there we go. Immediately on the right is a stunning large pantry of the type usually seen only in historic estates. And this was something she did all the time. The owner's continuing along the center hall, The dining room is next on the right. Back up. Well, that's the, I guess that. Dining room. There's a picture of you with doors though, isn't there? I don't know where that picture came from. Oh, there you are. I see. There you are. With the doors to the cutting it off from the center hall, which also the living room has. And then the next one was one of the corner cabinets, of which there were two. And the present den, access through the living room, was an open porch originally. She did that all the time. It is reached through French doors on either side of an original outdoor fireplace. These porches were typical of Mary's designs and were easily converted to make an extra room in the house, and everyone did that. Also, there's a small telephone room on the first floor in keeping with that day and age. Now let's look at the back stairs. And every house had back stairs, just about. And I guess one house so didn't have back stairs. The back stairs lead from the kitchen to the second floor, where there are 3 small rooms and a bath. They would have been used for maids' bedrooms and a staff day room. The his and her bedrooms, and with a bathroom in between, and one more generous bedroom and bath are on the second floor, with a door which could be locked, separating this space from the maid's quarters. The separate garage has a Dutch colonial roof line and includes a day room for a chauffeur. The handsome foundation of the house is built with very large, rough, local granite stones. Interestingly, Mary placed this house sideways to the street, which allows for privacy and a beautiful and cozy walled garden in the rear, originally part of the apple orchard on the Augustus Mead farm. Lynn and Scott had loved the house for 42 years. Lynn says, quote, "One of the best features of Mary's house is Mary Reynolds herself. She was an imaginative and smart woman who entered a man's world of construction with ingenuity and courage and was successful. 100 years later, our family has been so fortunate to have lived in one of Mary's wonderful houses," unquote. Mary's real estate development came just at the right time. After World War I, there was a terrific housing boom in Greenwich, and every house she built was sold immediately. From 1922 to 1929, Mary embarked on the biggest real estate challenge of her career, Cedar Hill. This is the map of it. She purchased 11 acres, bordered by a curve on North Maple Avenue, and abutting the William Rockefeller Estate, now Greenwich Academy and Deer Park, on the south and on the west. There are only 2 access roads into the property, which keeps it a hidden treasure. In 80 years, Mary recalls, quote, "It contained very heavy underbrush, cliffs, ravines, a brook, undisturbed wildflowers, a valley, and a magnificent view from the bluff. I laid out the roads, changed the course of the brook, put in water, electricity, gas, etc. Blasting went on for months. Handsome homes, ranging in price from $40,000 to $70,000, were built and quickly sold, 11 of them. My plans were drawn by architect Edward J. Smith, but I had no supervision from them. And he was in New Rochelle, and I haven't been able to find anything. You'll see a couple of his drawings coming up. So these were the properties. Mary Reynolds was 62 years old at this point and had the unqualified respect from those who knew her or worked with her. To manage an endeavor of this size, financially and administratively, took tremendous intelligence, business acumen, and unlimited energy. The first house she built is 300 North Maple Avenue, again, a home sweet home style. Then, amazingly enough, she built one more house on Moore Avenue right here in the middle of this project. And this is number 42, Moore Avenue. That's her seventh and last house on Moore. Her next house was 312 North Maple Avenue. The next one, Cedar Hill, 1 Cedar Hill. Then 3 Cedar Hill, 4 Cedar Hill. Now, the addresses I'm using here are the addresses the residents have chosen to use. They are all correct. I guess the postman is familiar with this territory. I visited Alexa Fishback at 372 Cedar Hill. And she is a lovely stucco home. She's shown here in her pantry. Here, the back stairs continue to the 3rd floor, and I've got both of those there. And the 3rd floor was amazing. She had big windows, and you really could have had anything up there. Ballroom, exercise room, bedrooms. It was really quite fabulous. Here again was an outside porch that had been remade into a handsome additional room. Then I visited Loretta Leary and her daughter, Susan Durrell, who's here today, at 2 Cedar Hill. In that sweet house. This is a charming and cozy house, cleverly built on the hillside close to North Maple Avenue. It has a slate roof and a lovely step-down living room with very high ceilings. Loretta remarked that these houses are built so well, quote, that you can't take them down, unquote. Then she built 314 North Maple Avenue and 360 Cedar Hill. This is an original drawing of the front of 360 Cedar Hill, followed by a lovely picture of the restored rear of 360 Cedar Hill. 360 Cedar Hill was completed in 1927. Sited at the very top of the Cedar Hill properties, it commands lovely views. This handsome English Cotswold house had been covered by clapboard siding on the exterior, and all the outside surfaces were painted white. The new owners, Alan and Karen Hart, were doing renovations after they purchased it in 2000 and found that under the exterior wall was a second wall, which was stucco and timber. Alan says, quote, "What a surprise to our neighbors and architect. While some repair work was necessary, we restored this facade and removed the white paint from all the stone surfaces. The result is the exterior restoration that we can all enjoy again as the house approaches its 96th year." Then we have 364 Cedar Hill, another drawing by the architect and followed by the house. And this house is just timeless. This is appealing. It kind of sprawls across the top of a hill, and it's just very appealing. Timeless design. The Cedar Hill timing was just perfect, as the Depression was soon to hit the United States. A year or two later, she might have been stuck with these houses on her hands. Again, her workmanship and materials were impeccable. She used all her signature features here in good measure. As her own rheumatism was bothering her, she created closet spaces which could be adapted to accommodate an elevator. And her last home is 400. We had somebody from 400. This she built for herself and lived in it. Somebody referred to the fact that she didn't move next door. But she was here, I think, 7 years or something. If you visit this hidden treasure today, you will marvel at the beautiful layout of properties, homes, and gardens, so untouched and hidden from view. It is completely private, despite being in close proximity to downtown Greenwich. I'm struck by the fact that unlike the grand developments of today, the two entrances to Cedar Hill look more like driveways than they do the imposing ingresses that we're used to. This foresight has kept Cedar Hill hidden and safe, and at the same time protected the houses from being torn down and rebuilt. It would be very hard to do, and you really couldn't improve that much on the original use and design. After enjoying the fruits of her labor for quite a few years, Mary embarked on a final building project. She bought 3 lots on Perry Ridge Road on the west side and in the middle of the street, possibly the best sites at the time. You can go to the Perry Ridge. She built 3 houses there between 1930 and 1936, moving into the middle one, number 14, which is this one, where she lived the rest of her life. Numbers 12 and 16 she rented until her death, giving her a good income. At the time of her death, each of her 3 children inherited the house. Her own home, the middle one, number 14, has a charming stone facade up to the middle of the second-story windows. She had an elevator here also. When I use the word elevator, think more about a dumb waiter. If any of you are old enough to know what a dumb waiter is, but she would get in it and then pull the ropes. Then you go to the next floor. So you saw the other 2. 12 is the next one. And 16. Not a very good picture, sorry. But which is your number? 16. That's us. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's not a good picture. And our final slide, or they're not slides, whatever. This is a 1938 picture from a Greenwich newspaper. And Mary A. Reynolds is the third from the left on the top row. See her there. She is listed as the director of the Angela Houston chapter of the Daughters of the Colonists. This national group is no longer active in Greenwich. They were devoted to erecting commemorative plaques to mark historical events. One of these is our treasured monument on Crocus Hill at Maple Avenue for the founders and the 27 proprietors of Greenwich. Fittingly, it was a very young Russell Reynolds Jr. who unveiled it. Mary Adeline Reynolds died on August 21st, 1948, at the age of 88. In addition to her real estate development, her 3 obituaries refer to her colonial roots and her participation in the Presbyterian Church and in local historic societies. What strikes one about Mary is her perspicacity and husbandry in building and selling houses. Hers was a no-nonsense approach, which didn't include extravagant and exaggerated touches, frivolity, or avant-garde design. She stuck to the basics: excellent materials and workmanship, good classic exterior construction, and a pleasant and comfortable interior designed to get the most enjoyment out of living. How did she do it? I've come to believe that her disciplined farming background and her complete acceptance of and dependence on God, Jesus Christ, and the Bible gave her the strength and confidence to do what few women of her time and place could have accomplished. Surely she was a woman before her time and one of the first liberated women in our area. She not only made her way in a man's world, but she had great success. Her 23 houses in Greenwich are her lasting legacy.